Good evening. I'd like to call this to order this meeting of the Cunningham Town Board for Monday, October 10th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey,
Here.
Ms. Colacetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin,
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth,
Present.
Mr. Williams. Thank you.
Next up is approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 public hearing and the September 12th, 2022 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by James. It's been pointed out that on the Cunningham Town Board meeting minutes, I was listed as present via phone, but I was physically present at that meeting. I think that was left over from the August minutes. Grace?
Thanks. I also just realized then we probably need to change chair would have been Diane Marlin instead of trustee Wu.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Additions to the agenda, we did have a request to move item number 9, closed session, up to put under item number 7, unfinished business. So it will follow the presentation on the state of homeless services for township residents. Is there a motion to make this change?
So moved.
Moved by Chandra. Is there a second?
Full second.
Seconded by Jaya. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, that change is made. Next up is public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee to verify bills.
Good evening. So if you look at the supervisor's memo, you'll see in the town fund, we had $42,202.39 in expenditures. The general assistance fund had $94,169.81, and the total expenditures was $136,372. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the bills detail that are in your packet.
Chris?
Danielle, are the 37 applications for general assistance on top of the already 71 that you're?
The 37,
Yeah, yes, there's 37 applications for general assistance. And then
Oh,
you have,
yes.
you have current.
correct.
So we
Yeah.
might be up to 108 soon, maybe. Maybe.
Actually, let me correct, this is the first time we're adding the applications, and we're trying to do that because we've had a high volume of applications. We are counting applications that came in the month of September. Some of them may be duplicated in the opens. That's the first answer. The second is a number of people who apply when they're out of work, and they may get work and then stop the application process. So I definitely would not expect that next month we'd be over 100. I wouldn't expect that. We are seeing a higher number of applications coming through, and I would imagine that we will inch up in our numbers, but I'm not expecting a big jump.
Any other questions? Mary Alice?
Hi, I was curious, you have, under rapid rehousing, you have $200 in cash. I was wondering if you could explain
Absolutely.
the process of releasing cash.
Yeah, so we only use cash typically for laundry services because we have to pull out cash and then we do an allocation of coins for rapid rehousing clients and sometimes for emergency housing clients. And we have a whole process internally about checking out coins and an accounting process with cash. That's really the only cash transactions we have, except for we do accept cash donations.
All right, thank you.
James?
Yeah, I have a question about, under training, there is associated with a trip, there is a travel guard charge for trip insurance. Is there a general practice to buy trip insurance for travel with the township? It's kind of unusual in my mind.
Given everything with the pandemic, I thought it was prudent to get trip insurance.
Okay, is there like a travel policy that guides these kinds of decisions for the township?
Yeah, so it doesn't cover trip insurance. It does cover when we use a town car, what reimbursements are eligible. For example, we don't reimburse alcohol expenses or other personal expenses. So we do have
Right.
internal policy that lists that. In terms of traveler's insurance, no. Although I do look at all receipts and sign off on receipts. And if I have concerns about expenditures, then I will raise those concerns. With traveler's insurance, I think I personally have purchased traveler's insurance on anything during COVID because they've been pretty strict, and they were lenient at first in 2020, but airlines are now fairly strict. You either have to purchase insurance or you have to buy one of the flexible
A refundable
passes,
ticket.
a refundable ticket.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, the insurance is less than the refundable ticket.
Okay, but I will express a word of caution that travel insurance has been notoriously hard to collect on for impacts outside of your own. So it's not, if a state or country shuts down, they will not reimburse for that, so.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah,
only for it's like any other healthcare, like if you get COVID or like you get the flu and you can't travel, it'll cover that, but it won't cover pandemic outcomes in general.
Or natural disasters or several other things.
Right.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
happy to look into that.
When I bought it, I was more concerned of someone getting COVID and not being able to
Okay,
travel.
thank you, because I don't think I'd seen it before, that's why.
Yeah,
I'm
we
asking.
typically did not purchase traveler's insurance, and that would not be a regular policy.
Mary Alice?
Just to dovetail on what James was saying, I know that travel insurance has started to not reimburse people who have COVID. So that is something that, I know that there's different travel insurance companies out there, but if that's the reason for purchasing it, you might want to read the fine details on that.
Yeah, sure, we'll take a look.
Grace?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about, I don't know if I'm misreading some of the negative numbers on the net income. And I know in your memo, there's also some concerns about the needs increasing and kind of going through more of our budget out of meeting needs, which I definitely support. But I didn't know if you could speak on that and if there's any other funds that we're expecting or trying to get to kind of balance that out.
Can you refer me to the negative balance items?
Oh, yeah, just on the income and expenses. For me, it's just the very first
The
page
very
of
first page.
all the stuff. Yeah, page 1.
And I don't see negative numbers on income and expenses.
Net income at the bottom.
Oh, so, well, I think net income is, so essentially net income is not very useful. When we get to the quarterly financial report, I think it'll be more useful to look at that. It's because almost all of our income comes all at once through property taxes. And so essentially, you'll see negative net income for a while, and then you'll see a huge kind of windfall. So it's just that our QuickBooks report is basically just reporting on this month. So definitely you will see negatives most months because we get the majority of our money through property taxes. But I can address some of the other issues you spoke to when we get to the quarterly financial report.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion to approve the town fund and general assistance fund?
I'll move approval of the town fund and the general assistance fund.
I'll second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by James. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, those are approved. We'll move on to reports of officers. Danielle?
Yeah, so I'm going to be brief because I think I want to spend most of the time on the quarterly financial report. But if you look at the supervisor's memo, We're staying pretty stable in terms of general assistance. Our homeless numbers are still down. We are supporting more transgender and non-binary participants. I think that is in part due to our outreach efforts to that population. We have more people on our education employment track, and I've asked our staff to really break that down so you can see exactly where they are on that track. I felt like the numbers there in the past have not really told the whole story. I wanted to just point out, I try to give the report in the same order so that you kind of get used to the programmatic order. And then I'm going to try to highlight the areas that are kind of worth looking at. So, you know, if an explanation point doesn't work, you can ask for something else. But in these cases, I think an exclamation point is warranted. With rental assistance, we met with our rental assistance partners. That's us, the City of Champaign Township, and Regional Plan Commission. All of us have reported spending half of our annual rental assistance budgets in less than 3 months. So I saw our budget and I was concerned that maybe we had varied from what our partners were doing. And I confirmed with them that we're almost all at 50%. Due to this, we had to institute an immediate change to lower our maximum rental assistance from 2 months to 1 month. And that is effective already in place. And then we're going to be working with our partners to address what will certainly be end of the year funding gaps. We most likely will be requesting rental assistance dollars from a consolidated fund between Champaign and Urbana that the home ARP dollars and CDBG and other dollars are in. So I'm just letting you know there's no guarantee we will get that funding. But because general assistance, as we'll see in the quarterly report, is right on target. In the past, we've been under on general assistance, so we could overspend on rental assistance. We don't have that luxury. I've actually balanced the budget for this year, and still I came under with rental assistance. So I am concerned about that piece. If we continue down, the second item I wanted to bring to your attention is last month I had said that we had 4 literally homeless families on our wait list for emergency housing, and we've increased our housing from 6 to 8 units over the summer. So, you know, we're actually, you know, we've increased housing. We still see a longer wait list. That has gone up, so we're now at 7. I did want to mention that 4 are in and out of homelessness. They're still considered literally homeless when they were assessed, but there may be other options for them, so they're kind of going in and out of sleeping in the car or in an unsafe condition. 2 are consistently unhoused, and 1 is a new referral, so I don't have a status. So essentially, I am concerned about this. If you ask why it's happening, I think my answer is I don't know yet, except I think that because we have a a case manager in the schools who started in April, but really has, you know, we were almost out of school when he started. I think that we just have a better understanding of the housing instabilities in the Urbana schools. I do think because we're seeing an increase in rental assistance applications, and I can't attribute that only to being in the schools because our PC and City of Champaign Township is not in the schools, that there is an increase in housing instability overall. So that's a piece. I do want to pair that with some good news, which is the Housing Authority has announced new housing vouchers will be available from HUD for homeless and McKinney-Vento, like housing insecure residents, starting January 1st. So they'll be partnering with the continuum service providers for the homeless for referrals. We continue to seek solutions for immigrant families who don't qualify for vouchers, so that's just a gap for us to consider. Our housing case management is going strong. I'm going to include that in my presentation later. We did give a presentation on campus about digital inclusion as part of the chancellor's kind of outreach work. It was very exciting. It's not in here because it just happened Friday, but Jessica Black from our office represented the office. And our Bucket Brigade service is doing very well. We're pretty much serving the full 20 families per week. I do want to announce that United Way has started a similar program, which we knew was coming online, called the Ride United program. And that's great because we have so many requests for food deliveries that we have another referral that we can send people to. I'm happy to take any questions you have about the memo.
Okay. Don't see any questions. Oh, sure.
Could you say what CSPH stands for again? Continuum?
It is called, we actually changed our name 2 years ago, so we're the Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless.
Oh,
It's all the homeless service providers in the county, which includes, and those who basically aren't involved in funding, so it includes the cities, the townships, lots of nonprofits. We've worked hard to get Housing Authority and Carl and other partners to the table who are new partners. So we meet, I serve on the executive committee of that, and we meet weekly as a continuum. And honestly, it's an open meeting, so if you ever want to learn more about homeless service provision, you would be welcome to attend. I think we're on Zoom right now, so it's pretty easy to attend.
thank you. Also, another question. You mentioned something about the pot of money. Can you go back to that?
Yeah, so I actually tried to pull some text about it so that I could include it here. It's just the text is not out yet. But it was announced at the Continuum of Service Providers, the homeless, as well as a United Way meeting that I was in with the city and others a few weeks before, that the city has, the two cities are partnering to create a consolidated pot of funding of the home ARP dollars, which I think you all discussed last month. Some home dollars, some CDBG dollars. City of Champaign's putting in some general fund dollars. And it is about $5 million is what was announced at CSPH. And that will open in November for a month-long application process. And there's a lot of different groups that are planning to apply to that pot. And so that will be an opportunity for competitive funding for organizations, municipalities, other groups that are providing housing and homeless services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the quarterly financial review.
Yep. Yeah, so I will be brief here. The primary, and I'm going to pull up the relevant piece here. So essentially what you can see is I tried to put it in yellow for you to see any time that we are essentially over 25, 28%, since we're a quarter of the way through. So good news, we had higher interest rates. So we did see an increase there. In terms of expenses, personnel other is over, and the assessor, that's mostly in the assessor's line item, and that's temporary help for a special project that ends in mid-October. And then there was a budgeting error initially. If you look at FICA was under budgeted. So what happened is that we accidentally put one of the things that should be in FICA in IMRF paydown. We're not doing any IMRF paydown this year. So essentially, if you bring the $19,091 from IMRF paydown into FICA, that balances, and we can take care of that with a line item transfer. But at this point, I don't consider, we won't go over budget on FICA. If we look at equipment, which is 6411, you see that we are at 50% for the year, but that includes 2 new staff computers, one of whom is for our accounting, so it has to be a pretty robust system, and that's a one-time expense. And then, so I don't expect us to necessarily go over that. In terms of training, we're at 40%, and our biggest expense is the annual IAAO National Conference, which is an assessors conference for assessors and deputies. And then our legal has tended to run over annually. We've really been trying to get a hold of our legal costs. In this case, we're at 35%, and that's because we have significant prep for a appellate court argument on the Carl case, which we expect to be December or January. So I'm hoping that we can recoup some of that expense in the second half. Happy to answer any questions that you, oh wait, hold on. That is town board fund, excuse me. General assistance fund, I'm like, wait, there's some, where's the rental assistance? So in terms of income, we're over income we've got better than expected Social Security reimbursements. We received our last fiscal year reimbursement for DHS in this fiscal year, so we're over. And we received more. So USD had a situation where they couldn't spend down on a grant, and they asked us to support that spend down. So we were able to move those dollars to homeless families, and they made them those excess dollars available to us. So that was unexpected. And then we got a nice interest income bump by moving to shifting our funds to the Illinois fund. In terms of expenses, so you saw the USD increase. You'll see that in supplies. So those supplies are specifically school supplies and clothing. They're all paid for under that grant. We did not go over budget on the grant. We did install energy efficient HVAC with an Ameren grant. So we're over on equipment purchase. We'll see a decrease in energy costs, and that's also a one-time expense. We also paid for Chromebooks for homeless students that were paid for by USD, and so that is included in equipment purchase. So I don't expect that we would go over. If you look at personal allowances, the next page, so essentially we're close to on target. We're just slightly over, but I'm not particularly concerned at this point. But that does not mean we don't have any wiggle room with GA. You can see the rental assistance, we're at a little over 50%. Rapid rehousing, this is confusing because all of our fiscal year 22, which is over now, expenses are placed in this line item, and we work on a cash basis. So we will see more dollars come in on ESG, and we'll also see more expenses, so those should level out. And that we made a new line item for USD school housing. So we had to pay out of pocket for some USD students to stay in housing, out in hotel housing. We had hoped to get reimbursed by USD for that, but we ended up shifting those dollars elsewhere. So that is essentially a new line item, and we're going to have to, take care of that in a line item transfer. That said, I don't expect, so what happened is ROE does not put homeless families up over the summer because school is not in session. We didn't note that, and so we put homeless families who had specific risk factors in hotel housing while ROE did not have a program. But we're not expecting to make a habit of that. Any questions about the financial report?
Mary Alice?
It was really helpful for you to highlight the different items and add some explanation. Wayne, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the special project that's supposed to be done soon.
It's in relation to our website. We're gonna update it where it includes a lot more information for residential property, so hopefully it is done soon in the next couple weeks. But there's a lot of data entry that needed to go with that.
So I know that, a couple of years ago, you had worked to put those property cards online so that people could look at what the assessor's office has about the property. What additional information are you now able to add?
So scanning the property record cards is one thing, and it allows for people to see their property record card. We've gotten a lot less calls and walk-ins because of that. Actually, most of our calls are calls for the supervisor that we didn't have to transfer. But this next project is actually putting all of that data from a scanned PDF into a databaseable form. So one, it'll let us query different property attributes easier, but also it'll show up better on the website where you don't have to download a PDF.
So you're building a database, it sounds like, and tying it to the website.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Grace?
Thanks. Yeah, also appreciate the notes there. And this collaboration with the school district. It seems like there's a lot of partnerships going on there. I think that's great. I was wondering if you could speak a little more about the possible solutions for the overuse than budgeted for rental assistance due to the need. Like if you see that balancing out some other way or some things we can do to support that.
I mean, I think we have to apply for funds to the consolidated pot, even with going down to 1 month of rental assistance, which I have some concerns about, but we'll I will kind of track, denials, and based on that, we'll still go over budget if we continue to spend at this level. So I think all three partners are actually going to apply jointly for additional funds. I've at least reached out to them, and we've discussed doing that. I don't, essentially, so that pot, I don't know how many groups are applying and what the projects are. I've heard different things that sound like expensive capital improvement projects that might be sorely needed, and I certainly, I would much rather take a collaborative approach than a competitive approach, because we're all a continuum that works together closely, but frankly, there will be limited dollars, to take advantage of that. So as soon as I have information about what we're applying for, I can, be happy to share with the town board our, what our intention is. I don't even have a number at this point. I want it to be reasonable to the size of the pot and in relation to our partners.
Thank you. And so just to clarify, you're saying that the township would plan to apply for some of the funds in this consolidated pot,
Yeah.
right? That
I
would
mean, say the
be,
word pot because I don't have a better term, but it's like a consolidated fund between the two cities that will be announced in November. I mean, we'll open its application process in November.
okay, and that's talk of municipalities contributing some home ARP money or ARP or other ones they have, you said, and CDBG, right? They have some
Correct.
plans
I
from
was
other
told it was
cities.
home ARP, home, CDBG, and general fund from the city of Champaign. That was the announcement at the United Way meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chandra?
So, all the cities are both cities are contributing from their home ARP and their CBDG funds to this consolidated fund.
Correct. I don't have the dollars that are being contributed. They just mentioned the categories of funding, and then they mentioned the total amount. So I know those categories are included, but I don't know the dollar amounts.
So the rental assistance is an eligible category to be used from this.
Yeah, I looked into it recently. There's a HUD exchange document that I've now committed to memory. But definitely home dollars can be used. CDBG dollars can be used for rental assistance. But when I spoke with Brayton, who's really an expert in this area, I know that there's a cap on how much CDBG dollars can go to rental assistance because it's considered a service, and we're capped at 15% of our allocation. So we would hope to go for the home dollars, and that would free up CDBG dollars for some of the capital improvements, property acquisition and building of shelter and housing, some of which I've shared with you. I've forwarded some of the plans just so that you were aware, and I'll continue to do that just so that the council/town board is aware of some of the public proposals that are being put forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We will move on to the presentation.
Okay. So this presentation borrows from some of what I presented to the executive committee, and I hope to present to the continuum. I'm still, this is very much focused on Cunningham Township and not the county as a whole, so I'll retool it for that. This is the state of homeless services for Cunningham Township residents. And I was asked, I think Gracie, you had requested if I could do some landscaping at the last town board meeting, and I'm always happy to landscape and share. We try to kind of keep a whole picture, a whole county picture, as well as our own piece. So most about this, you know a lot about the services. I'm going to skip through fairly quickly what we offer, and I'm going to give you the slides so that if you're like, ooh, I can't remember how many people they served, it's right there on the slide. You'll have it. And I'm really going to try to focus the slides on the gaps because I think that was the request, and I know that we're time constrained. The mayor had shared there's 2 closed sessions tonight, so I want to be mindful of your time. So this is basically what our homeless services now looks like. We provide a continuum within Cunningham Township. And I'm going to go kind of component by component, like left to right. So we provide immediate needs, emergency shelter, transportation, help, housing services, and links. And anyone can call CTSO, and we also make rounds in the community to find individuals and couples who are homeless. This is our numbers served, 55 in the last 12 months. And I think this is useful when we think about gaps to see, of the 21 we're currently engaged with, what are their reasons for being unsheltered? Because this gets at the gaps piece. 5 are for substance abuse issues. 4 are a couple wanting to stay together. 4 are unwilling. Sometimes it's safety concerns. Sometimes they don't like shelter. 3 are barred from the shelter. You could potentially add that number to the substance abuse and mental health because the shelter is kind of constrained. They're not a dry shelter, but they will if you're actively using. Folks are not welcome to stay at the what is they're calling a mid-barrier shelter at CO at home. So 2 for mental health reasons and 3 are unknown. So that gives us a little bit of a picture of what that's looking at. These are observations. I looked at case notes, I went through our HMIS system, and I interviewed all our street outreach staff. Housing extras for homeless residents with income is a surprising finding. Many of the people we're working with, not the majority, but many receive SSI, which is $841 a month, and yet they're still street homeless. And that is really a tragedy of that program. We also have third shift workers who can't stay in a nighttime only shelter because they're actually working at night, and so they sleep in the library and other public places during the day. So if we can move to a 24/7 shelter, it'll address that. We see a high number of people with disabilities and medical fragility. We do see hospitals discharging medically fragile individuals to the streets, and I brought this up with both OSF and Carle Hospital. We also see a low engagement with doctoring and reproductive health. This includes pregnant women who have not seen a doctor in OBGYN yet and are not actively doctoring. We hear a lot of stories of victims of violence and crime. All 3 trans residents we have worked with in this time period report recent and sometimes repeated physical and sexual assault. Our female residents served report sexual harassment and assault, and high theft rate across the board. Loss of money, loss of phone, loss of individual documents, not having security of basic possessions. There are some gaps in detox and mental health support. It's actually gotten better in our community in the last 5 years in terms of what is available. But I just give an example of short-term facilities will discharge after 28 days, but the plan is to go to a longer-term facility, but there's no beds. And if you stay outside after 24 hours, you can't go back you no longer qualify for long-term, so you have to go back to short-term. So we're seeing folks cycle through the short-term when they really need long-term support. With families, this is our school outreach program. We have a housing case manager in the schools every week in every single school, and we provide emergency housing for literally homeless families, rental assistance, help applying for housing subsidies, immediate needs, and referrals. So this is an interesting chart because it really shows we now have, since April, some program data to show what the situation is. They call it current family housing situation. This is self-reported. So we do self-reported, and then we go in and we do assessment, and honestly, the situation changes and fluctuates over time. So 39 families, including 81 children, referred since our program started. 14 are HUD homeless, meaning literally homeless. 24 report unstable housing. We have 7 on our wait list. And you can kind of see the situations that they're in. Doubled up with others is the largest. Behind on rent, but not yet facing evictions is high. But unsheltered is also fairly high, 8. Evicted today, no shelter tonight, 4. Staying in a motel or hotel paid for themselves but running out of money, 4. And then staying in shelter. So these top 2 are really unstable housing, and the bottom 5 are literally homeless in most cases. I want to point this out because it came up in the national assessment that Champaign County is particularly noted in the state plan to end homelessness lists the racial disparities in Champaign County in terms of our homeless population. So we are unique in the large number of African Americans, the large percentage of African Americans to our population who are facing homelessness and housing insecurity. And so I include this here. We run an emergency housing program. You're quite aware of this program. I will just mention that we've supported 55 households with 96 children since we started, with a 90% success rate. I also want to point out that our average is 51 days. I think that's important when we look at gaps. There's no time limit. 51 days is pretty reasonable, but then when we get to gaps, we'll see that some people stay shorter time frames, and our longest resident has been 9 months, which is fairly long. This is Destiny. She came to us through a referral from the Housing Authority, and she has 6 children, and she is now living in subsidized housing in Champaign, working at the hospital, and doing very well. Filling gaps. So here's the gap analysis. I have 2 slides for this. One is, I think we need to address the emergency housing capacity issues. There's 2 ways to kind of skin that cat. One is to have more units for emergency housing. The other is to open up more transitional units so that folks who need longer time can really, and maybe more supportive services over a longer time frame, can get that. So what I'd like to see is actually units that can flex, so we could do, we don't have we don't have a time cap like emergency family shelter does. So essentially, I think that if we had more units, we can say, okay, your first 3 months is emergency, and if you end up not being able to move into housing, despite meeting all the program goals, because you can only stay in the program if you meet the action goals, right? Then you flip over to transitional. And at that point, there's additional services and support that kind of kick in. I think, so invest in transitional supportive housing. I've pointed out 3 categories of families that I think really need this. Heads of households with temporary or permanent disabilities, high-risk pregnancies, loss of, we have folks who have lost legs, we have folks who are recently blind or hard of hearing. No-income households, this includes undiagnosed mental health issues, new mothers, folks where their chances of getting income in the short term are pretty low, but over time we can work with them on that issue, whether it's Social Security disability or building up their resume and support. And then refugee and immigrant households. So emergency family shelter in Champaign, which it can't serve Urbana residents, but we've really tried, because it's close to Champaign schools, to have Champaign residents go to emergency family shelter and Urbana residents go here. Otherwise, kids are really far away from their support and their schools. But we do share, but they can move into Maple Grove transitional housing, and we don't have that option here. So it's really part of the issue. And then we really need to work on wraparound services while people are in their housing. We need to increase housing subsidies for families in particular, or tenant-based rent assistance. Our emergency housing vouchers from the Housing Authority have essentially run out. We do have the new vouchers coming January 1st. We just found out about that. But we really need we have a gap right now, and we need a plan after that. Those are, again, like kind of COVID-based vouchers. And again, RPC's emergency family shelter participants qualify for vouchers, but ours do not. So we don't actually have a pathway into vouchers outside of the emergency housing vouchers, and I am in discussions with Housing Authority about that. I will just click down. We talked about disabled head of household. We need to remove barriers to permanent market housing, including enforcing fair housing laws and also working on income and credit repair. We really need to think of housing as sexual assault and abuse prevention. And at some point, I'd like to share research that I've done in that area. I'm getting feedback from my professor on that. And once I've made edits, I'd like to release that to you in the continuum. And we really need LGBTQ specific housing services and competency. And then we need to invest in homeless prevention, because that's how we keep people from becoming homeless in the first place. So increasing our RA, TBRA can also help with that. Here's our emergence. So just, we also do 4 units of hotel rooms. And we've served 31 individuals in the last 12 months. Our average stay is 45 days. We need to find an immediate winter low barrier shelter solution. You may have seen in the paper that City of Champaign Township made an offer on the old former Time Center. that offer was refused. I was asked to convene a meeting with, by City of Champaign Township and by See You at Home. We're having that meeting tomorrow at the United Way. And so we're going to be talking about immediate solutions so that we can address this winter's problem. The issue is that the consolidated funding really doesn't sync up with this winter. You know, the funding will be allocated in February, March of next year, and so it doesn't address this winter's needs. We need to support emergency housing, shelter expansion, and stabilization. And really keep folks who are seeking sobriety separate from folks who are actively using. I think that's an important piece that we've learned. Our hotel program is expensive, and every time there's a special event, they're displaced. And so we have to scramble to find additional hotels. I am meeting with them this week about that. I would like to seek a permanent location. It will be less expensive if we could acquire additional property for emergency housing, transitional, and our hotel program, which may be one additional unit. And then we need to support permanent supportive housing, both vouchers and case management. Sometimes we have the vouchers locally, but we don't have the case management. And especially for chronically homeless residents and those with mental health issues to move out of living in the shelter. The shelter should be very much a temporary solution. And then support for culturally competent solutions for underserved populations. And that includes survivors of violence who are oftentimes in fight or flight mode, and it's very difficult, and they're very triggered by staying in congregate shelter situations. That's the end of my presentation, and I hope that we can work together on solutions. Happy to take questions.
Any questions? Mary Alice?
Hi, thanks for that overview. I appreciate it. It's very interesting to have those kinds of numbers to look at. So you had mentioned SSI has always been woefully inaccurate amount of money for people to actually survive on. Are they eligible for housing vouchers?
Yes.
They are eligible. Is that how most SSI recipients end up being housed permanently?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Most of the project-based housing in town is either for seniors or people with disabilities. So Steer Place, for example, in Urbana could be both, but that does not serve families. So anybody who has children, even if they have a disability, is not housed. There is also a wait list for those opportunities. And not everybody is accommodated in their disability and staying there. So they may have a really hard time, if they have PTSD, sharing walls, or, so it's not really for everyone. And so what we see is we do see people housed with each other. We see people staying with friends and family. And we see people staying in very, the few kind of rooming houses and efficiency apartments. And we will see people who are literally paying $650 a month, and their only source of income is $841 a month. And once you get SSI, you're kicked off of food stamps, which is insane. If there was one change I could make, it would be that people keep their food stamps while they also receive SSI, because they have to pay for utilities and food and toilet paper in that allocation. And so a lot of our home deliveries are now with folks, oftentimes with folks who are on SSI who have a disability, who also need kind of toiletry and food support.
So is that a state decision or a federal decision that they get kicked off of?
It's federal. Well, I shouldn't say that. The state administers it, so I'm not sure the answer to that. It's a federal program that comes through the state.
SSI is federally funded, but.
Correct, but also food stamps is through the
Right,
state.
USDA.
I know, and I spoke with Carol's, I actually spoke before the House Subcommittee on Housing about this at the state level, and I said, and I listed the other states that actually supplement SSI with state dollars, because that's something Illinois could do as a fairly progressive and visionary state, is to supplement SSI payments. Obviously, I'm not queen of the state, so I only get to give this input. I don't get to determine anything.
And then you had talked about housing vouchers in the past and how there were a lot of them circulating with people unable to find housing. So even if we have new housing vouchers, do you have a sense of how many housing vouchers are still circulating in the community?
I could check, but the last time I looked, it was about 100 in a given month. The Housing Authority actually has really great data on this every month on their website. and they list how many housing vouchers are circulating, and that actually limits their ability to reach out to HUD for additional dollars. So there's
Right.
dollars on the table. So really, one of the things that we need, we're still getting answers from property managers that say, we don't take vouchers, we don't work with the housing authority, or their actual income has to be 3 times rent, not their portion that they pay with a voucher, which is also legally a form of discrimination. And so the state law will kick in January 1st, and I think that'll help level the playing field between Champaign and Urbana. But I would really encourage us, and we plan on doing a publicity campaign and do some education, tenant education and landlord education around that piece. But I really would like to partner with all the municipalities and all the public leaders to really get the word out about that piece. It's not the only concern. There's also credit issues and others, but people, they come back to us and they don't say that it's a credit problem, and they don't say it's an eviction problem. I have multiple emails that say, no, we don't take vouchers. Sometimes it's in Champaign, sometimes it's in Urbana. When it happens in Urbana, we attempt to work with that individual to reach out to the human relations officer here.
Is there any sense of, you said approximately 100 housing vouchers circulating in the community? That's the broader community, right? Champaign County?
That's Champaign County,
It's
correct.
not just Urbana.
That's the whole county.
Is there a sense of how many in Urbana? Is it split?
Well, I think it's hard because a person they're looking for housing everywhere, so I don't know exactly how we would
Okay.
indicate their
Sure.
residency.
And my last question had to do with transitional housing. I was wondering if you could just give me a quick, kind of definition in terms of what is transitional housing versus, we know emergency housing is you're on the streets, you need a
Yep.
place to sleep tonight. But how does it move into transitional housing?
So there are different definitions for transitional housing. The way I'm using it, and I have seen it used, is typically somebody who's staying 3 to 24 months, and not longer than that, and not shorter than that typically. So it's a 3 to 24 months, whereas a lot of the emergency housing is really geared for those short-term stays.
And
For example,
Champaign
Courage
House-
Connection is 45 days, Emergency Family Shelter is 30 to 45 days. I think Salvation Army is 3 months. Those are all considered emergency. We're interesting in that we get to do what we want, right? And we have emergency housing, and so we've not put a limit because we recognize that the families have different circumstances. And so we really are seeing, as I showed, the average usually is that, 50, I think it was 2 months essentially for families. But we're just seeing there's a handful of families who need more, and that's where I want to, one of the things I want to do is go from an emergency situation to transitional, where actually the families are paying program fees and starting to get used to paying for utilities and used to having to, and doing some savings towards a goal and getting intensive services around credit repair and kind of workforce development. And so I think that we don't usually have time when we're doing emergency housing. We're really focused on getting them into permanent housing. But with transitional housing, I think it would be different layered services that would look different, much more like Courage Connection used to do. They've shut down all of their transitional housing at this point, and Church Street is empty. But they used to provide more of those kind of layered services.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We have time for a couple more questions. Anyone else have questions? Okay. Okay, thank you. This isn't the end of the conversation,
Yeah.
obviously. And I would remind folks, we also have Pinewood Place that accepts housing vouchers, project-based housing vouchers for persons with disabilities, specifically on
Yeah.
SSI. Yeah.
Pinewood is a very good example of a supportive housing program for people with disabilities, and Township actually provides the support piece. We are the entity that provides the support, and the Housing Authority provides the units, and things like that I think are really promising for our future.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're one-bedroom apartments, so they're not geared for families. Okay, oh, sure.
Thank you for this whole presentation, and it was very enlightening. And even the 24/7 shelter, I didn't even consider the third shift workers who sleep during the day. It's clear that we need this type of shelter. So if there was a pot of money, say $450,000, how would Township spend that? What can Township do to sort of, address some of these and how would you spend that sort of money?
Yeah, I mean, I would make recommendations both to fund partners who are focused, yeah, our lane has really been families, LGBTQ population, and survivors. So I feel like we're moving in that direction because so many of our partners are really focused on individual men and in some cases, homeless women who need low barrier services. So I think that, you know, we're really close, actually. Not close like it feels far away, but the progress that we've made as a community to actually have more service providers, including both townships. I mean, this is like we've completely changed what township looks like in our community, and we've been able to level up and provide on both sides of Wright Street homeless services, and shelters, family shelter here, and for folks with disabilities and LGBTQ folks. And for them, they're looking to launch low barrier shelter. And I think there's a lot of conversations about where those will be located and what it will look like. And I would just encourage, but I think a lot of those decisions are going to be made in the next 3 to 6 months. Like, this is a really ripe time for a lot of decision making. And I guess, you know, I would encourage both cities, and the county and townships to stay really close to the decision making, to be able to see where strategic inputs can make a big difference to kind of level up the infrastructure overall for what we have. Obviously, we've done that with family shelter, and although we have a long wait list, I think that's partly because we're actually serving people, and there is a program now, and we're going to have a better understanding of like kind of like where we level off. So I'm really proud that we have those 8 units. They've been hugely successful, and I'd like to, you know, certainly Township is hoping. I want to be careful because at some point we cap out on what we can afford staffing wise, but I'm going to be bringing a proposal to you all that looks at a modest staffing expansion to support transitional housing, and for us to continue our rapid rehousing through TBRA, tenant-based rent assistance. And those are areas where Township certainly could use investment. And I also think our partners like Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, See You at Home. I think City of Champaign Township is actually fine in terms of funding for a while. But you know, they're going to need to have a long-term plan for that shelter. And you know, and there are other. So those, you know, I would say the Continuum is one of the best places to learn more about those proposals.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay, James.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C5 for the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired.
I'll second.
Motion by James, seconded by Mary Alice. Thank you for the presentation, Danielle. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
yeah.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes, and we will reconvene upstairs in the executive conference room. So we have on the floor a motion to come out of closed session, and we'll need a roll call vote.
Okay.
I made the motion, Sheree second.
Okay. Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes, and that motion was made by Mary Alice and seconded by Sharice. And then the last item on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to, is tabling the correct term to use for this, or are we just going to defer consideration?
If you-
Postpone.
Postpone?
Yeah, you should postpone, because if you table it, you have to bring it back. before the end of this meeting.
Okay, so we will postpone consideration of resolution number T 2022-10-017R, which is the resolution renewing a lease for the assessor's office at Lincoln Square. Is there a motion?
I will make that motion to postpone that to November 7th is or no, it should be November
The town board meeting in
16th.
November
15th,
15th.
November 15th. Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion by James, seconded by Chandra. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the Cunningham Town Board, we are adjourned. And in just a minute, we'll move into the regular meeting of the Urbana City Council.